I see this woman running in the park here with a mask on. Missed it. Oh well, anyway. I'm astonished that people would do that. They'd exercise like that with a mask. There's nobody around her. Nobody around her. She ran down about a quarter of a mile that way and then came back. There's nobody here. Look at this. There's nobody there. Okay? There she goes. And she's wearing a mask. People are killing themselves and they don't even realize it because they are filled with such fear that the media and Democrats have instilled in them. Anyway, wasn't here to talk about masks today. We're a week away from the election, and what I wanted to do was something I've been meaning to do for weeks now. I just never got to do it. But, like I say, we're 7 days away from the election. A week from today, actually. And so I think it's important that this comes out now. Now, people are always asking, what has Trump done? He hasn't done anything, this and that. Well, he hasn't done anything as far as you're concerned because you haven't been told. You're watching fake news media, and they don't tell you what the president has accomplished. Now, this thing came out, it's from the, what is it? I forget what report it is now. The Frank Report on April 18th, 2020. It was written by Perino van de Hey. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, sir. But it's a great article, and it's very informative, and I want to share it with everybody out there, especially those people who only listen to CNN, MSNBC, the alphabets on regular TV, and so on and so forth. Okay? Because I think it's very, very important that you all learn about this before the election, in fact. All right. As of April, and a lot of accomplishments have been added since then, but as of April, number one, Trump recently had at the time signed 3 bills to benefit Native people. One gave compensation to the Spokane tribe for loss of lands in the mid-1900s. One funded native language programs, and the third gives federal recognition to the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa Indians in Montana. More recently, I might say, just a few days ago, President Trump promised the Lumbek tribe the recognition that they've been seeking for over a century now. They are made up of 55,000 Lumbek Indians, or natives if you prefer. They are the biggest, the largest tribe east of the Mississippi, and they have no federal recognition. President Trump is going to correct that as soon as the election's over. Trump finally finalized the creation of Space Force as our 6th military branch. Most people know that, and the mainstream media, the fake news media, I should say, made fun of it. It's called it Star Wars, and I forget the name of the other film that had Starship Troopers, things like that. He signed a law to make cruelty to animals a federal felony so that animal abusers face tougher consequences. PETA, P-E-T-A, not to be confused with me, who is really one of the people for the eating of tasty animals, should be lauding this. But of course, they're not, because they're on the Democrat side no matter what. Trump also signed a bill making CBD and hemp legal. Okay, and this is not to make people high. It's to help people who've got chronic pain and so on and so forth. Plus, hemp was made illegal thanks to the efforts of DuPont, who wanted to sell their nylon ropes and nylon products rather than have hemp ropes and so forth compete with them. I'm not a champion of hemp, but there are people like, who's the actor? I forget his name now. Well, anyway, there are people who have been championing hemp for a long time now because it's good to make clothing and shoes and a lot of other things. Anyway, let's get on with this, because I got 125 things to get onto, and I'm only here on number 6, which is Trump's EPA gave $100 million to fix the water infrastructure problem in Flint, Michigan. Something that was discovered during the Obama administration, and which the Obama administration did absolutely nothing about. Under Trump's leadership in 2018, the United States surpassed Russia and Saudi Arabia to become the world's largest producer of crude oil. We became energy independent under this president. Oops, I hope I didn't screw up the microphone there. Trump signed a law ending the gag orders on pharmacists that prevented them from sharing money-saving information with their clients. Trump signed the, quote, Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, or, unquote, FOSTA, which includes the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, known as SESTA. Don't you love these stupid anagrams? Which give both law enforcement and victims new tools to fight sex trafficking. Trump signed a bill to require airports to provide spaces for breastfeeding moms, so that the little babies who cry when they see an exposed breast and being given to a baby don't cry, even though they don't care that about other nudity and pornographic situations. That's something for another time. Okay, the 25% lowest paid Americans enjoyed a 4.5% income boost in November 2019, which outpaces a 2.9% gain in earnings for the country's highest paid workers at the time. Low-wage workers were benefiting from higher minimum wages and from corporations that were increasing entry-level pay. Now, okay, some people may say, oh, that was a Democrat platform, this and that, but the president did go along with it. He signed it into law rather than veto it. And the reason that this is a success is because of the booming economy under President Trump. Jobs were more plentiful for the candidates, more plentiful than candidates at the time. That was all pre-COVID, of course. And COVID, as most people know, but the left won't admit, was a Democrat panic. Over a real virus, but it was a panic created to destroy the economy in the hopes of defeating President Trump, because no president with a great economy has ever not been reelected. And that was the Democrats' hope. All right, I'm getting off the track here again. Let's see. Trump signed the biggest wilderness protection and conservation bill in a decade and designated 375,000 acres as protected land. I don't know that I agree with that, because I think the federal government owns too much land as it is. But he did that, and the people who claim he is anti-conservationist, they're full of crap. Trump signed the Save Our Seas Act, which funds $10 million per year to clear tons of plastic and garbage from the ocean. Another environmental plus, which the environmentalists don't know about, or the ones who do know about it are so democratic, so leftist, so Marxist that they don't want you to know about it. He signed a bill this year allowing some drug imports from Canada so that prescription prices would go down. I myself have benefited from that, from a certain prescription drug that I take, which is, my copay went from $50 all the way down to $3 and change. Trump signed an executive order this year that forces all healthcare providers to disclose the cost of their services so that Americans can comparison shop and know how much less providers charge insurance companies. So they can negotiate with the doctors that way, or hospitals or whatever, clinics. When signing that bill, he said that no American should be blindsided from medical services they never agreed to in advance, which I think everyone can agree with. Hospitals will now be required to post their standard charges for services, which include the discounted price a hospital is willing to accept. If a hospital will accept so much from Medicare or from an insurance company, they should post that, and so that an individual can walk in and negotiate as close to that price as possible. In the 8 years prior to President Trump's inauguration, prescription drug prices increased by an average of 3.6% per year. Under Trump, drug prices have seen year-over-year declines in 9 of the last 10 months, with a 1.1% drop as of the most recent month. Remember, this is as of April last year, so we're looking at the 9 months before, April of this year, rather. We're looking at the 9 months previous to that. Where are we here? He created a White House VA hotline to help veterans, and principally staffed it with veterans and direct family members of veterans. And veterans are lauding it, and they are now going happily to get care at Veterans Administration hospitals and clinics. VA employees are being held accountable, finally, for poor performance, with more than 4,000 VA employees removed, demoted, and suspended so far as of April. As I said, the performance of the VA has greatly improved under President Trump. Ask any veteran who uses the VA or who's used it in the past. Trump issued an executive order requiring the Secretaries of Defense, Homeland Security, and Veterans Affairs to submit a joint plan to provide veterans access to mental health treatment as they transition to civilian life. Because of a bill signed and championed by Trump in 2020, most federal employees will see their pay increase by an average of 3.1%, the largest raise in more than 10 years. That is another thing that I probably don't agree with, because part of working for any government is job security, and in return for the job security, they're supposed to make less than they would in the private sector. But now government employees are making more than people in the public sector, which is wrong. Sorry, but it's wrong. Trump signed into law up to 12 weeks of paid parental leave for millions of federal workers. I'm not going to comment on that. No, okay, there's good and bad to that, so we'll just leave it. It's a thing. The Trump administration will provide HIV prevention drugs for free to 200,000 uninsured patients per year for 11 years. There were all-time record sales during the 2019 holidays. I hope that once President Trump is reelected this year, that we'll get another record-breaking retail season come this Christmas. It's going to be hard because a lot of small businesses went out of business because of this COVID panic that the Democrats foisted upon us with the help of the media. But I'm hopeful. Trump signed an order allowing small businesses to group together when buying insurance to get a better price. This helps small businesses, which are the backbone of the middle class, compete with employers in big corporations, and also reduces their costs so that they can pass on any savings to their customers and or employees, and still make more profit. President Trump signed a Preventing Maternal Deaths Act that provides funding for states to develop maternal mortality reviews to better understand maternal complications and identify solutions, and largely focuses on reducing the higher mortality rates for Black Americans. Now, I think that's a lot better than funding studies, as has been done by Congress in past years, of the sex habits of a certain frog or a tree frog or whatever the hell. Okay, ridiculous studies that we've funded with taxpayer dollars. This is a better way to spend our tax dollars. In 2018, President Trump signed the groundbreaking First Step Act, a criminal justice bill which enacted reforms that make our justice system fairer and help former inmates successfully return to society. Many of those inmates were in jail thanks to Joe Biden's support of the 1992 crime bill, which resulted in many blacks being, and others, but mainly blacks being arrested for minor drug offenses, which, by the way, Biden is now against. But that might be because his son Hunter is such a drug addict. He doesn't want his son to suffer the same thing that he made a lot of blacks go through. He meaning the old man, Biden, the big guy. All right, the First Step Act expanded judicial discretion in sentencing of nonviolent crimes. Biden's bill, on the other hand, back in '92, gave minimum sentences that judges had no discretion over. Over 90% of those benefiting from the retroactive sentencing reductions in the First Step Act are Black Americans. So tell me again how President Trump is racist. The First Step Act provides rehabilitative programs to inmates, helping them successfully rejoin society and not return to crime. Whether or not it'll help, who knows? Recidivism is pretty high for most ex-convicts, but let's hope that this help from the government, will do something to reduce that. Trump increased funding for historically black colleges and universities, known as HBCUs, by more than 14%. Many presidents have promised to help the black colleges. None has ever done it, but the racist Donald Trump did. Trump signed legislation forgiving Hurricane Katrina debt that threatened these black colleges and universities. New single-family home sales were up in 31.6% in October 2019 compared to just 1 year previous. He made HBCUs a priority by creating the position of Executive Director of the White House Initiative on HBCUs. So now the historically black colleges have a voice, a direct voice, right into the White House. But this was done by a racist president? Trump received a bipartisan justice award at a historically black college for his criminal justice reform accomplishments. The poverty rate fell to a 17-year low of 11.8% under the Trump administration as a result of a jobs-rich environment. This, of course, was all pre-COVID, but it's coming back. It's coming back. And I might point out that when the stock market dropped at the beginning of this coronavirus pandemic, panic pandemic I call it, the stock market plummeted and it dropped and bottomed out at the highest point where it was under Obama and Bush. So was that so bad? That its lowest point under Donald Trump was the highest point that it reached under Obama and Bush. Think about that. Poverty rates for African Americans and Hispanic Americans reached their lowest levels since the U.S. began collecting such data. This was as of April of 2020. President Trump signed a bill that creates 5 national monuments, expands several national parks, adds 1.3 million acres of wilderness, and permanently reauthorizes the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This directly puts the lie to all those leftist conservation, quote, conservation-minded people, unquote, who claim he is anti-conservation, anti-environment. They're full of crap. Trump's USDA committed $124 million to rebuild rural water infrastructure. Again, the left claims he's against fresh water and fresh air and so forth. Liars! Okay. Prior to the unexpected coronavirus pandemic, consumer confidence and small business confidence was at an all-time high. Again, prior to the unexpected coronavirus pandemic, more than 7 million jobs were created since Donald Trump was elected in 2016. Prior to the unexpected coronavirus pandemic, more Americans were employed than ever recorded before in our history. More than 400,000 manufacturing jobs were created since his election. And remember, what President Obama said? He said that manufacturing jobs were gone from the United States forever. And he asked, what, is Donald Trump promising to bring back manufacturing jobs? What, does he have some kind of magic wand? Well, I guess he did, didn't he, Barack? Trump appointed 5 openly gay ambassadors. This puts the lie to all those leftists who claim he's anti-gay. This has been the most gay-friendly president we've ever had. Trump ordered Rick Grinnell, his openly gay ambassador to Germany, to lead a global initiative to decriminalize homosexuality across the globe. There you go. That's anti-gay, isn't it? Through Trump's Anti-Trafficking Coordination Team, ACT Team initiative, federal law enforcement more than doubled conviction of human traffickers and increased the number of defendants charged by 75% in ACT Team districts. In 2018, the Department of Justice dismantled an organization that was the Internet's leading source of prostitution-related advertisements, resulting in sex trafficking. Trump's Office of Management and Budget published new anti-trafficking guidance for government procurement officials to more effectively combat human trafficking. Again, no president has fought against human trafficking more than Donald Trump has. Trump's Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Homeland Security investigations arrested 1,588 criminals associated with human trafficking. This was as of April 2020. I'm sure a lot more have been arrested since then. Trump's Department of Health and Human Services provided funding to support the National Human Trafficking Hotline to identify perpetrators and give victims the help they need. The hotline identified 16,862 potential human trafficking cases. Again, that's as of April 2020. I'm sure many more have been discovered since then, because these people aren't going to stop. It's too lucrative. Trump's DOJ provided grants to organizations that support human trafficking victims, serving nearly 9,000 cases from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018. The Department of Homeland Security has hired more victim assistance specialists, helping victims get resources and support. President Trump called on Congress to pass school choice legislation so that no child is trapped in a failing school because of his or her zip code. Now, it's funny that black parents who have children in schools want the school choice, but Democrats are totally against it, and teachers' unions are completely against it also. Why? Why? The people who want it are the ones who should have the final say, not the people who are going to profit off of the continuously failing public school systems. Not all public school systems fail, I have to admit, but too many of them are failing, and they are failing the students. The president also signed funding legislation in September 2018 that increased funding for school choice by $42 million. He puts his money where his mouth is, or his pen where his mouth is, whatever you want to say. See, hey, Obama, President Trump also has a phone and a pen. The tax cut signed into law by President Trump promotes school choice by allowing families to use 529 college savings plans for elementary and secondary education. Under President Trump's leadership, ISIS lost most of their territory and has been largely dismantled. ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was killed. President Trump signed the first Perkins CTE reauthorization since 2016, authorizing more than $1 billion for states each year to fund vocational and career education programs. This is something that many people have said has been necessary for years. Not everyone is cut out for college, and a lot of people go to college, take out some women's studies, not to pick on the women's studies or whatever, but let's say women's studies courses or black studies or whatever, and then they wind up flipping burgers at McDonald's. Meanwhile, we are in desperate need of plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and other people in the trades. And the president has decided that the federal government will help people get into these trades. I hope I didn't screw up the microphone again. Okay, he also signed an executive order expanding apprenticeship opportunities for students and workers, going along that same vocational tack. Trump issued an executive order prohibiting the U.S. government from discriminating against Christians or punishing expressions of faith, which a lot of politicians and a lot of bureaucrats have been doing for a long time now. The Constitution specifically prohibits the government from preferring one religion over another, yet it's clear that media and politicians and bureaucrats have favored certain religions over others, especially over Christians. Trump signed an executive order that allows the government to withhold money from college campuses deemed to be anti-Semitic and who fail to combat anti-Semitism. Take note, Jews, please. You're talking against this president claiming or thinking he's anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, you don't know that he's the best friend you've had in ever, I guess. Trump imposed sanctions on the socialists in Venezuela who have killed their citizens. And that was actually on videos that you could see on YouTube. Finalized a new trade agreement with South Korea. He made a deal with the European Union to increase U.S. energy exports to Europe. So we're no longer importing energy, but we're also exporting energy. That's good for our economy. That's good for Americans. That is what a leader does, is look out for his country, improve his country. He withdrew the U.S. from the job-killing TPP deal. He secured which, by the way, Joe Biden would love to get back into. Secured $250 billion in new trade and investment deals in China and $12 billion in Vietnam. He okayed up to $12 billion in aid for farmers affected by unfair trade retaliation, mainly from China. And remember, China has Uncle Joe Biden in their pocket. He's had over a dozen U.S. hostages freed, including those that Obama could not get freed. I don't know if he could not get them freed or just decided not to. Trump signed the Music Modernization Act, the biggest change to copyright law in decades, which, of course, helps creators. But artists all over are against President Trump because they've been brainwashed by the mainstream media. Well, I say again, they're not mainstream. They are left-wing media. They are propagandists. But I digress again. Here we go. Trump secured billions that will fund the building of a wall at our southern border. Over 400 miles have been built of this border. Some people say, oh, he didn't build it all. Some of it he just redid. And so it still counts because the wall is much more effective than it was before. Not only that, it's being guarded by Mexico's army. Let's see. Trump secured, as well as our own, of course. The Trump administration is promoting second chance hiring to give former inmates the opportunity to live crime-free lives and find meaningful employment. This hopefully will keep them from recidivism, going back to crime to put money in their pockets. Trump's DOJ and Board of Prisons launched a new, quote, ready-to-work initiative, unquote, to help connect employers directly with former prisoners. Again, most of those prisoners are black, but President Trump is racist, isn't he? No, he's not. President Trump's historic tax cut legislation included new opportunity zone incentives to promote investment in low-income communities across the country. Not just black, not just Hispanic, poor white communities too. But most of these communities are black and Hispanic, and they're going to benefit from this. Let's see, 8,764 communities across the country have been designated as opportunity zones. That was as of April 2020. I don't know, for all I know, more have been added to that. Opportunity zones are expected to spur $100 billion in long-term private capital investment in economically distressed communities across the country. Of course, this was all before COVID, so that's slowed down a bit, but I believe once we are over this media-induced pandemic panic, that things will start getting back on track again. But only if President Trump is reelected, of course. There we go. Trump directed the Education Secretary to end Common Core. Thank God. Thank God. That is the worst thing, one of the worst things that the Education Department has ever inflicted on the country, on students. Trump signed the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund into law. Trump signed measure funding prevention programs for veteran suicide. Companies have brought back over $1 trillion from overseas because of the TCJA bill that Trump signed. Prior to the coronavirus pandemic, manufacturing jobs were growing at the fastest rate in more than 30 years. All right, the next few were all prior to the coronavirus pandemic, or panic pandemic as I call it. The stock market reached record highs. Median household income hit highest levels ever recorded. African American unemployment went to an all-time low. Hispanic American unemployment. All right, I'm annoyed because an alarm I had on my phone went off and cut off the video I was doing. But I'm back trying to set up this camera again. All right, here we go. All right, let's see. Come on, hold up there. All right, here we go. All right, let's get back to this. Again, I want to say that what I'm talking about at the moment is all stuff that was happening prior to the coronavirus pandemic. Okay? I'll reiterate, manufacturing jobs were growing at the fastest rate in more than 30 years. The stock market reached record level highs. Median household income hit the highest levels ever recorded. African American unemployment went down to an all-time low. Hispanic American unemployment went to an all-time low. Asian American unemployment was at an all-time low. Women's employment rate was at a 65-year low. Youth unemployment hit a 50-year low. We had the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded in our history. That was all prior to the pandemic, and once this thing is over, I think we're going to get back on those tracks, and we're going to get back to those numbers again. Maybe even better. hopefully better. The pledge to America's workers resulted in employers committing to train more than 4 million Americans. Again, though, all prior to the pandemic, 95% of U.S. manufacturers were optimistic about the future. That's the highest number ever recorded in history. And prior to the pandemic, as a result of the Republican tax bill, small businesses had the lowest top marginal tax rate in more than 80 years. Unfortunately, a lot of these small businesses are now out of business forever. But let's hope that President Trump can turn that around in a second term. Where are we here? Okay, there was a record number of regulations eliminated that hurt small businesses, to the benefit, I should say, of large, huge multinational corporations. So he signed welfare reform requiring able-bodied adults who don't have children to work or look for work if they are on welfare. President Clinton did the same thing, and the media backed him 100%. The Democrats backed him. But they're not backing him in President Trump because he's not Democrat. Under Trump, the FDA approved more affordable generic drugs than ever before in history, which is a boon to those who have to take prescription drugs and have been forced to pay premium prices for premium brand name drugs. He reformed Medicare programs to stop hospitals from overcharging low-income seniors on their drugs, saving seniors hundreds of millions of dollars this year alone. Okay, this continued even after the pandemic, of course. He signed right-to-try legislation allowing terminally ill patients to try experimental treatment that wasn't allowed before. The president secured $6 billion in new funding to fight the opioid epidemic, which has been a problem for years now. He signed the VA Choice Act and VA Accountability Act, expanded VA telehealth services, walk-in clinics, and same-day urgent primary and mental health care. U.S. oil production recently reached an all-time high, and so we're less dependent on oil from the Middle East, and anywhere else for that matter. The U.S. is a net natural gas exporter for the first time since 1957. NATO allies increased their defense spending because of his pressure campaign. And it stands to reason. If we're going to protect these countries, they should pay something for it. Okay, this is why those countries have, the left tells us, oh, they have all these social programs. They have it because they don't have to pay for their own defense. We're paying for it. Now they're going to have to chip in for their own defense, which is only fair. He withdrew from the United States from the job-killing Paris Climate Accord in 2017. And that same year, the U.S. still led the world by having the largest reduction in carbon emissions. That, if he had done nothing else, I think that was his greatest accomplishment. Because it would have destroyed our economy within a few years, and it would have helped countries like China and India, who were not subject to the same restrictions, carbon restrictions we were being forced under, to surpass us economically. Now you may say, oh, they're part of the world brotherhood too. So what's the big deal? The big deal is President Trump is looking out for his people. His people are the American people. He has to look out for the United States of America before he looks out for the world. And by helping the United States of America, he indirectly and directly actually helps the rest of the world also. All right, here we go. He has had his circuit court judge nominees being confirmed faster than any other new administration. He had his Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh confirmed, despite the fact that Democrats tried to vilify Judge Kavanaugh with lies, lies, and lies. He moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Okay, so he's racist, he's anti-Semitic, yet he's the only president who kept his word on moving the embassy to Jerusalem and recognizing that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Remember that, New York. Remember that everywhere else that there are liberal leftist Jews. Just remember who your real friend is. It's not the Democrat Party. Trump agreed to a new trade deal with Mexico and Canada that have increased jobs here and money coming in. Again, it's been interrupted by the pandemic, but we'll get back to that. We'll get back to the increases again. He reached a breakthrough agreement with the EU to increase U.S. exports. He imposed tariffs on China in response to China's forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and their chronically abusive trade practices. And he's agreed to a Part 1 trade deal with China. Trump signed legislation to improve the National Suicide Hotline. He signed the most comprehensive childhood cancer legislation ever into law, which will advance childhood cancer research and improve treatments. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act signed into law by Trump doubled the maximum amount of the child tax credit available to parents and lifted the income limit so that more people could claim it. It also created a new tax credit for other dependents. In 2018, President Trump signed into law a $2.4 billion funding increase for the Child Care and Development Fund, providing a total of $8.1 billion to states to fund child care for low-income families. Now, many low-income families are black, maybe the majority, but the Democrats want you to believe that President Trump is a racist. If he's a racist, he's the worst, most ineffective racist in history. All right, the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit, signed into law by President Trump, provides a tax credit equal to 20 to 35% of child care expenses, $3,000 per child and $6,000 per family, plus flexible spending accounts, or FSAs, allow you to set aside up to $5,000 in pre-tax dollars for use in child care. So he's family friendly too. And who benefits the most? Lower income people and middle class people. Not the rich, not the wealthy. In 2019, President Donald Trump signed the Autism Collaboration, Accountability, Research, Education, and Support Act, known as CARES, these anagrams, into law, which allocates $1.8 billion. Damn it, another alarm went off. I thought I turned them all off, but I didn't. Anyway, let's get back to it. President Trump signed into law two funding packages providing nearly $19 million in new funding for lupus-specific research and education programs, as well as an additional $41.7 billion in funding for the National Institutes of Health, the most lupus funding ever. Another upcoming accomplishment would have been in a couple of weeks after this report was out, the Frank report was out, Trump would have been signing the first major anti-robocall call in decades, the TRACE Act, or Telephone Robocall Abuse, Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence. Once its law, TRACE Act would extend the period of time the FCC has to catch and punish those who intentionally break telemarketing restrictions. The bill also requires voice service providers to develop a framework to verify calls are legitimate before they reach your phone. And prior to the pandemic, again, the U.S. stock market continually hit all-time record highs. And as I said before, the lowest it dropped to after the pandemic crushed the stock market was to a point that was at the highest under Obama and Bush. Because so many people asked for a document with all of this listed in one place, here it is. Okay? No links provided to remove bias, as Google search is easy. Just look for the Frank report of April 18, 2020 if you want to read it for yourself. Also, he's done a few other things after the report came out. He killed Iranian General Soleimani, who had been coordinating and planning terror attacks on American military personnel. Now, please explain to me why you have a problem with our president. Because he's misspoken a few times? You don't like the way he talks? It hurts you? Man up, huh? Tell me when you find a perfect person, okay? I don't think there's been one since Jesus Christ. But if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, well, you can say Muhammad or Moses or who. Well, Moses was definitely not perfect. Well, whatever. You know, Buddha. Was Buddha really perfect? I think Buddha would have argued that he wasn't. Anyway, I think, two more things I forgot to talk to you about. He lowered the costs of insulin drastically, and I already mentioned $100 million to fight sex traffickers. Anyway, why are people so against this president? Because mainstream. The lying fake news doesn't tell you about these accomplishments, okay? They don't want you to know. They want you to hate him. They show him in a negative light, unfairly report his accomplishments to undermine those achievements. Why? Because media is complicit in every single thing this man is trying to undo. And there you have it. I hope you go to the Frank Report of April 18th, 2020. Read this for yourself. Don't take my word for it. You know, President Trump has done a lot more than you've been told he did. I'm sorry that this thing is going to be in 3 pieces here because of these stupid alarms I had on my phone, but I should have put a do not disturb on it and gone through every single alarm, turned it off. But anyway, I hope I get my message across. And come next Tuesday, go and vote. Take your ballots with you, your mail-in ballots with you to show proof that you did not vote by mail. Vote. Vote in person. It's very important. Democrats are going to do everything they can to steal this election. And you now know the accomplishments of President Trump, accomplishments that you have all questioned. Many of you have questioned. What has he done? He's done a hell of a lot more than you ever thought he did. See you after the election.